My name is Orstell Barnett, and this is Franklin Boulevard Media. Orstell Barnett, and I was born December 18, 1963. I'm a native son of Gastonia, the pacemaker of the Piedmont, and I'm very proud of my city, very proud of the upbringing that I had. First, I'd like to say I was born in this city and reared in the early stages of my childhood in a corridor of the city called Romwood Road at the intersection also of Hillgate, which is commonly known as an area called Dogtown. Now, the story behind that is, as I understand it, is in the early days, formative stages of the neighborhood, a lot of dogs running loose in the neighborhood. So when people would come to visit, dogs would start barking everywhere because it's a dirt road initially. Thus, you have the name Dogtown. And my understanding also, because I was so young, is the houses were called shotgun houses, because you could see right through the house, and you shoot a gun, you go literally from front to back. So these were shotgun houses, and I wouldn't say they were the best housing in terms of insulation and other things, and heating and air conditioning. There was no such thing as that. So you had to sort of rely on each other for different things in the neighborhood. Primarily, I had input from that neighborhood. It was a very loving neighborhood, nurturing neighborhood. There were people out of that neighborhood that have gone on to do some very prominent things in the city and also in this nation. You may have heard of Elmo Hill. He was a neighbor in that neighborhood. In fact, the first lady of this city right now was a neighbor in the neighborhood. So you'd be surprised how humble beginnings can yield some magnificent things. Primarily at that time in the city of Gastonia, most of the people were mill workers. I know my grandfather and most of the people that lived there were mill workers, whether it was Burlington Mills or some of the other mills, and that was, the occupation, unless you were college educated, you were in a teaching role or maybe in government of some sort. So the income levels were not high, but the interesting thing is, people that grew up in the neighborhood never represented themselves as poor because they were rich in character, very rich in character. And that type of culture allows you to believe in yourself and believe that you can do and achieve anything that you set your mind to. Between the ages of up till I was around the third grade, I lived with my mother, single mom. We moved several times throughout this wonderful city, and it gave me a chance to see different sectors of the city. And before I was in the third grade, we had moved 6 times. The reason for that, as I understand it, my mama was always looking for a way for us to better our housing environment. So we moved from one neighborhood to the next neighborhood. We lived in pockets of the city. One area was called, as everybody knows, Highland Hill, Winter Hill area, which is now, I think, has a fire department there. We lived on Bradley Street in the Uptown area. We lived in an area that was a new development. I went to several elementary schools. And then ultimately, we ended up in a place called Mountain View. For those that are native to the city, they know that Mountain View is not probably the best area right now. But back then, in the early 70s, the development was brand new. So it was a new governmental housing project. And we were excited to live in a new apartment. And everything was new. The grass was green. Life was good, even though we were considered socioeconomically in the lower strata of the city. Again, because of the community and the parents trying to do better for themselves and get off of welfare and try to just create a nurturing, better environment for their children there. The irony is that in that environment, there were playgrounds, and there was a place called Phillips Center that we would walk to during the summer. During the summer, most of us had single moms, and they worked during the summer. So we had to look out for each other. And there was a bookmobile that came, and there was a food truck that came in the middle of the day, and we would all be ready for that when that came. And again, even though we were considered poor, that sense of community and coming together really allowed us to bond. And developed some lifelong relationships out of that community. And some people out of that community are right now community leaders here in the city. So you never know what's going to evolve, so you should never judge anyone based on where they lived and where they started out at. The great thing about that community is that we had, again, playgrounds where we played football, basketball, softball, and the football games were legendary. Let me just say that. And we were so creative in that project that for those of you who may be listening, there was something called USDA food. That's called the welfare. And they would give out all these bags of flour. So to sort of simulate the NFL, we would use that and line the field in white, what we call white chalk, to make it look like, hey, we got a field here. And we would invite other boys from the neighborhood, adjacent neighborhoods, to come and play against our best people. And I'm telling you, there were some competitive tackle football games. And when I say tackle, I mean tackle, not touch, tackle. It made you tough, it made you strong, it made you competitive, and it built in you an inner will to try to be the best that you could be. The basketball game's the same over at Phillips Center. I'm also very appreciative for the people that worked in those centers, because a lot of times we didn't have any other place to go during the day. So they had to open up the doors and look over us, make sure that everybody was safe, make sure that there was no danger around. And I'm very appreciative for all of the people that worked in that environment, because it truly did help us in terms of getting us a break, if you will, from the little community that we were in. And I remember also during that time establishing friendships. Right now, if you were to look at the elementary schools that the kids go to over there, they go to what's called Lingerfeld. But back then it was called Victory, because it was close to the Victory community. And a very important and impactful thing happened to me during that time. I met a young man who I would call my brother. He was a little white kid. Obviously, I'm black. But we were in school one day, and we sat together for lunch. And we discovered that we both liked football and food. And right behind that was friendship. So Kip Cloninger is his name. And by that friendship, as I matriculated through that elementary school, I got introduced to midget football. I loved football, that was my passion, but I didn't know how to get into organized football. So he said, all you gotta do is come and try out. So I went. Silverton is where I played. So I went to try out, and the coach said, son, you can't come back unless you have a mouthpiece and some cleats. Well, that blew me out of the water, because we couldn't afford a mouthpiece and cleats. So he said, man, don't worry about it. Just be at school the next day. And don't you know, he went home, got his parents to buy him another pair of cleats and mouthpiece, and gave me his. That got me started. So he said, man, look, they're slightly worn. I mean, I'm using grown-up terminology, but he's basically, here, man, put these on. I didn't know if they were gonna fit. The mouthpiece, he said, just boil it, you'll be all right. But that's how we rolled. So played there, and I'm telling you that truly that set a foundation, it set a passion in me to use football as a medium for greater things in life. So quickly, after a period of time, my mom decided to move to Charlotte. Again, I wasn't really too keen on moving to Charlotte. I cried the whole night. Please, please don't move. But what I didn't know is, again, she was trying to better her housing environment. So I went over there and stayed 1 week, and I said, that's it. I'm going back to Gastonia. So I called my grandfather. I was 11 years old. I'll never forget this, because I knew that the environment there was not really conducive for me to have a trajectory of success. I just could see it shaping up. It just was not a good environment for me. I wasn't comfortable. Gastonia was a place where all my friends were. My school was. my sports, and all the infrastructure that was giving me a good foundation for life was there. So she actually agreed to let me go stay with my grandfather. So I packed up my bags. He came and picked me up. Back to Gastonia we go. Back to Robinwood Road we go. Back to Dogtown, if you will. In the 6th grade, I went to Sherwood. And at Sherwood Elementary School, again, met some great people, lifelong friends, exceptional teachers that nurtured you. And I think what's different then than now is because there was no social media, people actually had to talk to each other. You actually had to take a personal interest in the child and their environment. And that's something that I think that's desperately missing today, because it really did change a lot of children for the better by having someone that they knew was concerned about not just for their educational achievement, but for them as young people trying to make it, trying to navigate life. Anyway, picked up my schoolwork, picked up my football career there, went back to my old team. Everything was great. And then I had to transition and matriculate from elementary school to junior high school. That was a shift, big shift for me, because you get used to one style of and rhythm of things going a certain way, and then all of a sudden you're in junior high school and you got to make some changes. But here's a fond memory. I lived in Robinwood Road, and we didn't live far enough for a bus to come pick us up, so we all had to walk. And we walked in the cold. We walked in the heat. And since we had to walk past the elementary school to get to the junior high school, all of the younger kids in the neighborhood would walk with us, and we would look after them. Again, that's that sense of community. Each one take care of each other. Everyone had a great relationship with each other's parents. And, I look back on that memory. These were fun times because you got to walk, you have conversations with people. And I remember some of the days were very cold. And you can actually hear the ice crunching under your feet as you try to go over the streams and the little branch. I mean, we had a little route carved out, and we would do that, cold heat. We were committed to being at school. In junior high school, academically, I began to hit my stride. And one of the teachers there, because I had a traumatic experience that happened to me in junior high school as soon as I got in the 7th grade, and that was that my grandmother passed away. Me and my grandmother were very close, very close. And I didn't realize that I was going through depression. And my whole countenance had changed. I was having some behavior problem at school, which was really out of character. So the teachers, they took a personal interest again, and they said, "This isn't like you. Is everything okay?" And I told them that my grandmother had passed. And they said, "Okay, we got to make sure we create an environment to allow him to grieve." And that really resonated with me. And it gave me a sense of understanding that I'm more than just somebody warming a seat. I'm an individual. I'm a person. And by them making that effort, extra effort, it allowed me to slowly come out of that and sort of get back into the groove of being a student and being an athlete. At Greer, I will say this, that was a great experience because I got a chance to go to school with arguably one of the greatest basketball players of all time, James Worthy. He was in the 9th grade, I was in the 7th grade, so I got to see all of his games. And unbeknownst to the public, North Carolina was already recruiting him, and I wouldn't doubt if he was already signed by then because they had somebody at each game. And again, this is just how it was. He was a phenomenal player, and he was a great guy too, just regular kid, just like the rest of us, trying to make it. So it was always great to see Gastonians go off and do great, wonderful things. Around the 8th grade, I had to make a decision, and that was to really hone in academically and also keep going with my football, and I also was a basketball player. I want to tell two quick stories about that before I progress into high school. So in junior high school, I never started a single football game, not one. And I went out for the basketball team, and I got cut. So here I am. I was on the football team, just had to play special teams. I was on what was called the scout team. Now, I want y'all to remember that, the scout team. That scout team means you had to go up against the number one defense, take all the hits, run the other team's plays. I did run track also, and I began to take up something called, foreign languages. The reason I say that is football, again, was my entree, if you will. I loved it with all my passion, but I understood that academically, you had to separate yourself if you wanted to go play college football, which was an aspirational dream of mine. I was not willing to let that dream die just because one coach couldn't see my talent. Went on to Ashbrook High School, home of the Green Wave.
The only school.
The only school.
The only school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So went there, played football and basketball my 10th grade year. Again, never started a single game. In fact, I was third string, not first string, not second string, third string. But there was something inside of me that would not let my dream die, even though I wasn't getting time on the field. Something happened very special, though, during that time there that pretty much set a foundation for the rest of my life. There was one man that took a personal interest in not just my athletic development, but my academic development. He was my math teacher, who was also on the coaching staff of the varsity team. And he would work with me in my algebra class to make sure I got all the equations and all the various techniques down for algebra. Because he said, if you can master algebra, you can master trigonometry. You do trigonometry, then you can do algebra too, and you'll be on your way. That set, because all the other courses I was doing great in, but math I was struggling. He took time, and he also said, come early every day for football practice. I'm gonna show you how to lift weights. So I went from just by that one person taking that personal interest in my development, not just athletically, but academically. It changed everything. So I went from by working out, by putting in the extra time, because I was a big kid. I was, growing into my frame, but I wasn't strong because I didn't know the technique of how to do it. He took time to show me. And I went from 5 feet 8 inches, 148 pounds in the 10th grade, to 5 feet 11 inches, 195 pounds by the time I was in the 12th grade. I went from third string in the 10th grade, second string in the 11th grade. In the last game of the year, of my 11th grade year, after sitting the bench all throughout junior high and high school, I started in the game against Hunter Huss. And if y'all understand, back at that time, the Huss and Ashbrook game, because there were only 2 high schools, if you started in that game, you got prime notoriety, prime attention. And the stands were packed, and I will never forget this. I went out for a pass, and I dove for the pass and caught the pass on the Huss side. I looked up, and it was the same coach that made me ride the bench at Greer. He looked down at me and said, wow, because even though he didn't see my value, I knew my value. It only took one coach to take a personal interest and help me understand you have value and I believe in you. Following year, fast forward, after a year of putting in a lot of work in my football and training and running in the off season, all the things that you need to do, I came back and Coach Bill Eccles told me on the first day, he said, Orstell, you're going to be first team all conference. I hadn't played a down, but he spoke that over me, and I believed it. Once I believed it, everything began to line and align itself. So I led the team in rushing, led the team in offense. But more importantly, academically, I was on course to graduate with an academic diploma. That set you apart because there were two types of diplomas, general and academic. Academic diploma showed the college schools that you were ready for college work. So I had that box checked. So after the season, after all the accolades and awards, nobody recruited me. Now I'm first team, all conference, 4A. Not 1, not 2, not 3, 4A, which was the highest level in the state at that time. And I felt some type of way about that, but rather than give up, because you have to understand, because of what happened to me all throughout the progression of my career, I didn't understand the concept of giving up. I just understood the concept of moving forward because I had a goal and a plan. So I went to the coach's office. I said, Coach, I want to go up to Gardner Webb. Can I get some of my game film? And at this time, your game film was on these canisters of film. You didn't have a huddle account where somebody can just look at a website. There was no web, no phones, nothing. You had to physically take your film up to the school. I had no car and no license. So I had to figure out the way. I called one of my cousins who was older. He took me up there. I sat outside the coach's offices. I said, Coach, gave him my name. I said, I'm from Ashbrook High School. I'd like for you to review my film and evaluate me and let me know if I have an opportunity. He said, okay, this is different. We don't usually have kids that show up out of the blue. But again, I had a goal and a dream. So what I did was I said, after you evaluate my film, if you think I can play, let me know. They went in, looked at the film, came back out, and said, we think you can play here. So I had to turn my hat around and go into business mode. You have to understand something. College football is business. By that I mean it takes money for you to go to college. And since I didn't have a scholarship and wasn't on scholarship and they didn't recruit me, they made it clear, look, we don't have any money for you this year. You're going to have to walk on. I said, no problem. I'm used to walking on. That's no problem with me. So they said, if you walk on and you make what's called a traveling squad, then that'll give you a chance to get a letter. I said, I can appreciate the letter, sir, but what I need is some money. Now, if we can't work out a scholarship situation, if I make the traveling squad, would you at least pay for my books? They said, sure, yeah. As time went on, I made the traveling squad. Now, you have to understand that college football back in those days was different. By that, I mean there were a lot of Division I NCAA players that academically didn't have the grades and so forth. So what they would do is they'd get moved to NAIA schools. NAIA schools were Division I, Division II, but I played for Gardner Webb University, which was Division I. And a lot of players that came there were actually from Georgia and UNC and other schools that were much larger, and they had all the accolades, if you will, 3-star, 4-star, all that kind of stuff. So those are the people I had to compete with to get a spot on the team. I wasn't concerned because after all the things that had happened growing up in the city in terms of what I had to fight through, because during the time of my high school, I had a very traumatic experience happen, and that was this. Both my mother and my brother, at various times during my high school period, were both incarcerated. It was all over the paper. So I knew about adversity. I knew about struggle. I knew about having to deal with uphill battles, if you will. So I said, no problem. As the season started, you go in for camp. Nobody knows your name. Okay, that's just how it is, because you're just a freshman. But they had something called freshman orientation, where you go up and you tell your school and so forth. And I said, my name is Orstell Barnett, and I'm from Gastonia, Ashbrook High School. And everybody looked around the room like, where's that? Now that was an insult. I'm telling you right now. I'm from Gastonia, Ashbrook, and you guys don't know where that is? We won the state championship in 1973. We don't know, we don't know. So I took that kind of personal, to be quite honest with you, because I knew the pedigree, I knew the background, I knew what we were made of here, people coming from this city. So we have a mission and we will accomplish that, given the opportunity. Because each day when you wake up, you have a chance and you have a choice. And while at Gardner Webb, I made the most of my chances and my choices. To make it short, I was a 4-year letterman. When I left the program, I was an academic All-American, from a walk-on to that. I had earned both an academic and an athletic scholarship. Why am I telling you this? Because there might be a young person out there that's wondering, can you do it? And I'm here to tell you, you absolutely can do it. But you have to be committed in the face of adversity, because those instances, those experiences form the basis for my professional career, because all of the various skills, teamwork, communication, the ability to negotiate situations, you're going to use these in life. And I would be remiss if I did not mention my grandfather. My grandfather had a 2nd grade education. He raised me. He demanded academic excellence from me, even though he had no idea of what was in my textbooks. He took me with him one day to Burlington Mills. And we got out of his truck. We walked in. And the first thing I noticed about Burlington Mills was it was a very hot place to work. Cotton was everywhere. People that were coming off of their shifts were covered in cotton because they had spinners and they had card room, all these different things. After about 10 minutes in there, I'm sweating profusely at this point. So we ride back home. On the way home, he said, "Son, I want you to know the type of work that you'll have to do if you don't take education seriously." Education was not necessarily available to me. I had to work on my tobacco farm because I was a sharecropper. But I want you to go on to college. I want you to achieve things that were only dreams of mine. So when the day came for me to graduate, I tell people this: I didn't graduate it. We graduated. We graduated because had it not been for him providing the structure, providing the discipline, providing the work ethic, because a lot of times while my friends were out playing, I was on the back of his truck. We were out working. We had a pig farm. We would get food from the various grocery stores, produce, if you will, that was like a day old or something. We pick that up, bring that back to our home, which was on Romwood Road, and we'll allow all the neighbors to come, and they would get things off the back of his truck. What's important about that? Let me tell you why that was important, because it showed me the importance of giving back. We also had a farm where we had crops. And I'm going back to graduation in just a minute from college. But I wanted to just help you understand that the foundation for being able to graduate for college, I learned everything I needed to know behind a plow and working with him on his farm. Because with discipline and hard work and structure, there is nothing you cannot achieve. So my days were very, very structured. So when I went to college, when you play college football, your days are very structured. Some of the kids, they didn't want to fall in line with structure. They wanted to do their own thing. But because of the discipline I learned early in life, I understood what it was like to get up early. I understood what it was like to follow instructions and follow them to the T. Even though I may not have been as fast, I knew technique. When you know technique and you know the basics and fundamentals, there is nothing things are unlimited to you. But you have to be willing to learn and put yourself in a position for success when opportunity presents itself. So, went through some injuries. Pro football was an aspiration, but after 4 years of college football and the injuries that I suffered, I knew, no, bruh, that's not gonna happen. So, after college, or before I even graduated from college, before I moved into my professional career, there was a recruiter on our campus, and they were looking for a certain profile because this was a new company called EDS. EDS was a global company at that time. After I did some research, I found out this was one of the preeminent Fortune 500 companies going into a new field called information technology and information processing. So what that gave me was an opportunity. I went to the interview. There were 3 interviews, and they had done their homework on me. They had a resume that I typed up, but then they also did some background research with professors and so forth because they were looking for a specific type of person. They were looking for someone with leadership ability. They were looking for someone that stuck to things. And they were looking for young people that finished things on time. And I fit their criteria because I finished 4 years of college, playing football, and never went to summer school. Number one, I couldn't afford it. So it was important for me academically to stay on track. I had a wonderful set of professors, Dr. Glenn Bottoms, that helped me tremendously. And as I graduated from Gardner-Webb and I interviewed with this company, I went through 3 interviews. And at the end of the 3rd interview, how I got to that interview, I had to borrow a car, my auntie's car, because I didn't have a car that was reliable. Drove up to Raleigh with a map because there was no GPS. Found the interview place. On time, I show up, go through the interview. At the interview, he said, "We'd like to make you an offer." I said, "Wow, this is different. Make me an offer." So he pulled out a contract. And when he saw how much money, when I saw how much money I was going to make at the bottom of the contract, I said, "Wow, this is great." And they said, "Will you accept?" I said, "Absolutely." So after signing my contract, I had a job starting with this company, and that was 1985. I started in July of 1985, worked for that company for 23 years. And some of the greatest experiences I ever had in my life was working for that company. I got a chance to travel the entire United States, learn, grow, get mentoring, had some great opportunities in terms of the ability to develop not just technical skills, but leadership skills. And as I progressed throughout my career, I'll never forget, an opportunity came. They were looking for someone to help reach back to HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. So I volunteered. I volunteered to go back to those campuses and mentor kids there. And I learned the importance of altruism from my grandfather. That was a core belief that I had. So by doing that, that created other opportunities in the company. So an opportunity came to me to be the account executive or the vice president overseeing the United Negro College Fund account, which meant I was responsible for a team of engineers to totally modernize all of their technology infrastructure, from the fundraising apparatus to the way that they do their technology, move it to a more sophisticated environment to where they did not have to use so many manual processes. Everything was automated. And I'll never forget, one day we had an opportunity to meet Bill and Melinda Gates' parents as they came through my data processing center. And we were just informed that we would be given the opportunity to develop the very first Bill and Melinda Gates Millennium website. My team built their first website, and I remember that when it was finished, the CEO of the United Negro College Fund called me and said, "Orstell, we're going to be on Good Morning to America tomorrow, and we're going to announce the website." You could have blown me over. I never in my wildest dreams ever thought I would be a part of something that would make history like that. But Gastonia was the type of city that it created an environment for me personally that, again, because of all the sacrifices and the love and the encouragement of the community, when I left the community, I had that confidence. But that really was what we call a pinnacle, because how many people get to do something that touches lives over generations? And I can say that that was probably, from a fulfilling standpoint in my professional career, I say that was probably the greatest feeling when I heard that first donation come in. They used to do something called the Evening of Stars. And when those donations came in, it made a sound on our systems. I said, wow, this is amazing. And we got a nice letter from the CEO, and it went excellent from there. So throughout my professional career, working with Fortune 500 companies, I always remembered, and I never forgot Ashbrook. I never forgot my university. So during the times when the football program was going on, I would always come back to the school, to the high school, and encourage the players to believe, to reach, to not give up, to believe you can do it. Because if I can, surely they can. A lot of them were way more talented than I was. But to be successful in life, and particularly if you're going to play football at any level, you have to have a dog in you. You have to have that tenacity. You have to be willing to go in and fight for what you want. Life is the same way. But you got to do it with a certain nuance. You have to do it with an attitude of understanding that there are basic principles that you have to follow. There's no shortcuts. But if you're willing to put the time, energy, and effort in, it's possible to achieve heights and do things that you didn't even have down on your list. I'm a living witness of that. And I can tell you that, nothing's off limits. And you shouldn't limit yourself simply because you started off in a neighborhood that others may view as substandard. That doesn't define you. That doesn't define you, who you are. You cannot let your environment define who you are. I learned that earlier. And there was one individual I want to mention. Her name is Brenda Jackson Boyce. She is an inspiration to me because she would always make an extra effort to come by and tell me, you're going to make it. You can do it. And when I graduated from college, she was one of the people who was there. And I felt so proud that I was able to do something to make her proud. You have to learn to do this with young people. Breathe life into their goals and aspirations. Speak positive over them. And inject that fuel called encouragement. And if we can learn to do that again, our communities can turn around. We can change people's lives, because the number one reason why people don't achieve great things is nobody believes that they can do it. Nobody believes in them. And I'm glad that I grew up in an era in this city, where you could walk places and be safe. You could go through a neighborhood and be safe. It really would be a great thing for us to go back to that. And one of the things I want to say as I close is this. My best friend, Kip Cloninger, he passed away about 5 years ago. But our relationship really should be a model for how America should be, because he was willing to give of himself when I needed, and I was there for him when he needed me. Because when he was getting ready to drop out of college, he wrote me a letter. He said, I don't think I can make it. I said, you need to come to Garden of the Web. This is a place you can make it, and I will personally see that you do. I say that because that experience that I had with him, I never forgot. Friendship, relationships are the most important thing you have in life, not money. I'm going to say it again. Yes, I needed the money. Yes, I wanted to get my career started. Yes, I've been blessed. But relationships are the capital that really give you the value out of life. Money is the least valuable asset that you'll ever own. People are important. Invest in relationships. Invest in people. And for the older people in the community like myself now, I have had an opportunity to give back in various ways. Right now, I serve as the chairman of the board of the Ashbrook Foundation. We raise money to help the school. We help with scholarships. We help with the arts. We help with athletic programs. We help with the infrastructure of the school. And that's allowed me to give back in a much more magnanimous way. And for those of you who would like to give, visit ashbrookfoundation.org and click on the contribute button. That'll allow us to do more, reach more, serve more, and to give more back to the next generation of leaders in our community. Thank you.